Jack Ruby gave clear clues to his role in the assassination when he was interviewed on camera.
The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. The people that had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
Now, these people are in very high positions, Jack?
Yes.
Jack Ruby said he would reveal the true story of the Kennedy assassination if he was moved from Dallas to Washington, D.C. for protection. Ruby feared for his life if he testified in Dallas, but no transfer to Washington, D.C. was ever authorized by federal authorities.
Jack, what do you think about the hearing? I want to correct what I stated before. He was vice president. Remember I said he was vice president? Yes, I did when I mentioned about Adlai Stevens. If he was vice president, there would never have been an assassination of our beloved President Kennedy. Would you explain it, Grant? Well, the answer is the man in office now.
That became increasingly important, even crucial to the Commission's findings, when it turned out that a distant bystander, James Tague, had been injured by a shot that had missed altogether. This placed the government in the awkward position of accounting for all of these wounds on the basis of only 2 bullets. The physicians at Parkland, moreover, and many other witnesses had observed a massive blowout to the back of the head, so great that, in fact, brain tissue in large quantity was hanging out of the skull of the president.
They got this sheet unwrapped off the head. There was a big gaping hole in the right rear of the head back here by the scallop part. And he said in apparent surgery of the head, in the head area. So we made notes of this.
They also observed a small wound to the throat, through which a tracheostomy was performed in a vain attempt to assist the president in saving his life. That afternoon, the physician who had performed that tracheostomy, Malcolm Perry, at 3:16, told reporters that the president had been shot in the throat from in front, an observation he had made personally and which he repeated 3 times. Subsequently, in order to affect the government's official position supported by the evidence, Gerald Ford had the description of the wound to the back, which actually had entered 5.5 inches below the collar, changed to describe it as having entered at the base of the back of the neck.
He admitted this when the AARB people contacted him out in Vail, Colorado by phone. He admitted that he had made this change.
If you would believe these 2 agents and believe their testimony in their report, they do 2 things. Number 1 is they guarantee you and show you right there that there's a cover-up, because they see totally opposite of what the Warren Commission puts down in their final report. Number 2, you take the back wound that never exited the body, definitely didn't enter the neck and come out of the neck. You take away the magic bullet. If you take away the magic bullet, you have 4 shots. So basically they prove a conspiracy because they prove there's a 4th shot, and they prove there was a cover-up because they saw totally opposite or different things than the Warren Commission puts in their report.
Spector said Seibert said he didn't make any notes. And he said O'Neill made just a few and destroyed them. And when I read that, I could feel the heat coming up on the back of my neck. And I made the statement, and it's in the record in the archives, that's a false statement.
What is so interesting about these 2 agents' testimony is, number 1, they wrote a report. The only people in that room that wrote a report. They can tell you every person that came in and out of that room, what happened. Both agents are talking centimeters and millimeters. And if you don't take notes, you can't possibly remember centimeters and millimeters. And this report was given to headquarters, FBI headquarters, on Tuesday, the day after the funeral. There is no doubt, completely no doubt, that J. Edgar Hoover read this report. Number one, he had to. I mean, the interest of the death of a president of the United States, you know the director of the FBI is going to read the report. But I have confirmation of the fact that he did, because Tuesday to Thursday or Friday, he has a conversation with President Johnson and quotes the report as far as where the bullets were fired from, or in where they hit the body, and comments in that conversation. You could tell he read that report.
How many shots were fired?
3.
Any of them fired at me?
No,
All 3 at the president?
all 3 at the president, and we have them. 2 of the shots fired at the president were splinted, but they had characteristics on them so that our ballistic expert was able to prove that they were fired by this gun. The third shot, which hit the president, he was hit by the first and the third. The second shot hit the governor. The third shot is a complete bullet that wasn't shattered, and that rolled out of the president's head. It tore a large part of the president's head off.
This official story would later change to accommodate the single bullet theory.
Well, the interesting thing about that, you have 2 agents, his agents, present in an autopsy of the death of a president, and they don't testify before the Warren Commission. That is strange. Why? They travel all over the country, they try to grab every witness in Dealey Plaza, the ones they want to hear, and disregard the ones they don't want to hear. But you have 2 federal officers, federal agents, that don't testify before that Warren Commission. It's plain and simple. They didn't want to talk to them because they saw something totally different than what they wanted to hear.
Once they arrived at the conclusion, and that was done already the day of the death, the day of the autopsy, that Lee Harvey Oswald was a sole assassin, then everything had to fit. That all the shots had to come from back to front, from right to left, and from up downward. And no matter what they had found, it was going to be squeezed in. That's what gave birth to the single bullet theory, which has been attributed primarily to Arlen Specter, now U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, but which was then seized upon by everybody because they had to grab, as a drowning man floundering in a sea with tempestuous storms, they've got to grab at something to survive. They already had everything in place. How could they put this together? Well, they come up with the theory that the bullet that hit John Kennedy in the back, at its now new upward revised location, coursed through his upper chest, base of the neck area, emerged from the level of the knot of the tie, which is where the hole was that the pathologist had missed on the night of the autopsy, and then re-entered John Connolly's back, pierced his right lung, fractured the right 5th rib, destroying 4 inches of that bone, exited from the front of John Connolly's right chest, re-entered the back of John Connolly's right wrist, led to a comminuted or shattered fracture of the distal end of the radius, a very dense, heavy bone in a 6'4" guy like John Connolly, severed almost completely the radial nerve, which is the nerve that permits the thumb to hold something in apposition with the fingers, exited from the front of the governor's right wrist, re-entered the governor's left thigh, went down, struck the femur, the large bone from the hip to the knee, bounced back out, came out through the same small hole, a 1/4 inch or so in diameter in the skin, and then from his clothing onto a stretcher. And you see, that is the single bullet theory. That stretcher bullet, Commission Exhibit 399, that we critics refer to as the magic bullet, that is the hero of the Warren Commission report. That is the sine qua non. That is the linchpin, the keystone. Without the single bullet theory, you cannot have a sole assassin. My favorite picture of all the pictures, and it's one for which I take no credit, but it's the one that if I had to give up every single thing, including the Zapruder film, this is the one thing that I would hold on to that totally destroys them, and that is the pictures. It's a composite which they made, and to this day, I bet you they'd give anything not to have made that composite. It shows sample bullets fired into cotton wadding. It shows a sample bullet fired through a goat carcass breaking 1 rib. and it shows a sample bullet fired through a human cadaver breaking a radius. No bullet, they had no bullets that broke both bones, as they claim the single bullet, 399, did. Well, when you look at the composite, the ball game's over. Let's go home. The case is over. Close up shop. The judge has just dismissed the case because the prosecution is giving us this evidence that shows that it can't be done. There is the stretcher bullet in all of its pristine grandeur. The bullets fired into cotton wadding have just as much deformity at the base. That's just from firing. A bullet fired through a goat carcass rib shows significant deformity, and a bullet fired through the radius of a human cadaver, forget about it. They have mushrooming, peeling back effect. In fact, some of the bullets fragmented. They, don't forget, they took the bullets that in their minds and eyes were the least damaged. And that is their experiment, which shows that it can't be done.